Ni hao, everybody! The 2025 Chinese Grand Prix is on this weekend. Round 2 of the 2025 Formula 1 season takes place at the Shanghai International Circuit in China. So ahead of this, guys, I've put all my preview videos together ahead of the event. This is the first sprint race of the season, so I've got a little explainer going over the sprint race, as well as the usual fast facts, the driver preview, previous winners, and the most memorable moments in the history of the event. It's all in this video. If you're watching on YouTube, do skip to the timestamp in the description for the part of the video you're looking for. It's all labeled in there. So yeah, let's dive in, guys. Let's have a look at the preview videos for the 2025 Chinese Grand Prix here on the F1 Chronicle. Round 2 of the 2025 Formula 1 season takes us to Shanghai, China. The Shanghai International Circuit will host the second round of the Formula 1 World Championship. And just like we do before every single F1 race, we're going to take a look at the 5 drivers to keep a special eye out for this weekend. There's some really incredible stories up and down the grid as always, guys, so let's dive in with the 5 drivers I'm going to be paying special attention to this weekend. And we're going to start with Sir Lewis Hamilton. Unsurprisingly, Hamilton usually features in these. He's very rarely out of the news in Formula 1, and he's very much in it after what was a very disappointing performance, not only for him but also for Ferrari as a whole after the Australian Grand Prix. However, historically, this is one of his best circuits in recent times. He has, of course, won here 6 times, which is 4 more times than anybody else has managed in the history of the Chinese Grand Prix, albeit he's not won since 2019, but at the same time, there's only ever been 1 Chinese Grand Prix since then in 2024 last year. So we'll see how Hamilton gets on. Like I said, this is a good track for him historically, but Ferrari will be very much hoping for a more regular weekend. The weather very much suggests it's going to be a more regular weekend, but also on top of that, at the same time, it's not going to rain either too. So let's see where Ferrari are, but there's a real case to be made that they're only the 4th fastest car on the grid. Let's talk about Ollie Bearman, though. I mean, he would kill for the car that is 4th fastest on the grid. The Haas car after Australia very much looks like the firm back markers of the field. They seem to have replaced Sauber almost as that. They qualified on the back row. They finished dead last in the race as well, 13th and 14th, the last of the runners for Bearman and his teammate Esteban Ocon. Bearman, of course, crashed twice during practice, missed the other session as well in the run up to that. And of course, this is a sprint weekend for China as well. So, you know, on top of that, you've only got 1 practice session, unfortunately, in the entire weekend. So he's not going to have much time to get used to the car before he's thrown into sprint qualifying to have to qualify for the sprint race. So it's looking like it could well be another difficult weekend for Bearman. But at the end of the day, he has proven himself to be a very fast driver. So I'm optimistic that Ollie can get a good result. But points is seeming like a pipe dream even at that early stage. Points could well be on the cards for Sauber again. Of course, Nico Hülkenberg did excellently to get 7th place in the Australian Grand Prix. But I'm going to highlight his teammate here, Gabriel Bortoleto. Bortoleto out-qualified Hülkenberg in qualifying. He managed to get his Sauber through to Q2, something that very rarely happened at any point during last season with Valtteri Bottas and Zhou Guanyu. Bortoleto was running well until, unfortunately, we don't know whether it was a mechanical failure or he ended up losing that part of the car because he ran over the curbs. Either way, he was out of the race, but he was running well before that, and he probably would have got points if he had managed to stay in the race. Unfortunately, he didn't do that. But China last season was one of the best circuits for Sauber. Their car really seems to suit the very long, twisting right-hand corners that we have so many of around this track. So I'm optimistic they can be challengers for points, not only in the sprint, but also in the Grand Prix race on Sunday as well. So we could see some first points for the latest Brazilian to join the Formula 1 grid. Let's talk about Isaac Hadjar, though. He'll be hoping for points this weekend, and given the pace of his teammate Yuki Tsunoda in Australia and his own pace in qualifying as well, in fairness, there could be well on the cards for this. Unfortunately, they didn't manage to get any points. Tsunoda ended up finishing outside of the points due to not pitting at the correct time, and Isaac Hadjar didn't even make the start of the race thanks to spinning out on the formation lap. Now, since then, he has, of course, come under criticism from Helmut Marko, the senior advisor for the Red Bull organisation, but at the same time, a lot of people have criticised Marko, including myself, for his comments about Hadjar, which seemed very insensitive, to say the least. But Hadjar needs to collect himself and have a good weekend. He just needs a quiet weekend where hopefully he'll get points in the Racing Bulls, because they need to get points on the board. Their rivals Williams have got a lot of points on the board thanks to Alex Albon's 5th place in Australia. Speaking of 5, let's go with the final of the 5 drivers I'm highlighting today, and it's Oscar Piastri. Now, I'm highlighting Piastri because, of course, really, given the pace of the McLaren, he should have got 2nd place in Australia, and he comfortably would have done that, if not gone for the win as well, if it wasn't for the fact that he, of course, spun out when the rain started to fall about halfway through the race. Because of that, he finished in, where was he? 9th place at the end due to that, and that's a big deficit he's got to make up to his teammate Lando Norris. Now, Norris finished 2nd last season in the Chinese Grand Prix, so this is a good track for Norris. You could also argue it's a good track for McLaren as well, so it's going to be interesting to see how these two get on. But basically, we're going to watch out for Piastri because he's the guy who needs to make up the ground. He needs to make big moves in both the sprint and the Grand Prix race on Sunday as well. So I'm going to be keeping an eagle eye on the young Aussie for this as well. You never know, he might get that first pole position in Formula 1 as well. But who are you going to be looking out for this weekend, especially, guys? Let us know in the comments below. It's that time of the week again. We've got the Chinese Grand Prix on this weekend, so let's get through as many fast facts as possible in 5 minutes or less here on the F1 Chronicle. So let's not delay, guys. Let's get into the fast facts for the Chinese Grand Prix. The Chinese Grand Prix returns to the calendar for the first time since 2019 in 2024, having first appeared on the F1 calendar in 2004. The 2019 race was also F1000, the 1000th Grand Prix since the official inception of the sport in 1950. The 5.451 kilometre layout features 16 turns, 9 to the right, 7 to the left. The racing lap record from the first race in 2004 still stands today, set by Michael Schumacher, and the layout has not changed in that entire time. In 2005, the circuit hosted the season finale for the one and only time. Having originally taken place towards the end of the F1 calendar, the race moved to a more permanent slot in the early stages of the season from 2009 onwards. In 2024, the Chinese Grand Prix saw more non-DRS assisted overtakes, 25, than any other race on the calendar, with the hairpin at the end of the long back straight a popular overtaking spot. And the 2016 race holds the record for the most amount of overtakes in a dry Grand Prix. The first 7 Chinese Grand Prix were all won by different drivers, and only 3 different drivers have won on multiple occasions in Shanghai. Mercedes claimed 6 consecutive pole positions at the track between 2012 and 2017. Like 2024, Shanghai will also host the first F1 sprint of the race weekend of the season in 2025. The circuit has been fully resurfaced ahead of the event this year, which means we could see that lap record be broken at long last. A podium finish on Sunday, the Mercedes team can claim Mercedes-Benz's 300th top 3 finish in Formula 1 history this weekend, but we'll have to see how Antonelli and Russell get on. For 2025, China will host the first round of the F1 Academy season, so look out for that, as well as the all-female racing series gets going for 2025. China was home to Red Bull Racing's first pole position and race victory, as Sebastian Vettel delivered the win on Red Bull's 75th Grand Prix in Formula 1 in 2009. Last year in Shanghai, Max Verstappen secured his 100th pole in the team's history. He went on to win the race, marking the 63rd time that a Red Bull racing car has converted pole into victory. Verstappen has won 11 of the 18 sprint races ever held in Formula 1. In that period, he's amassed 111 sprint points, 42 more than any other driver. And the last fast fact, it's not one to do with Formula 1, one to do with China. The average number of hours per day that a giant panda spends eating is 15. This symbol of China can weigh between 70 and 120 kilograms and measure between 120 and 190 centimeters in height. In terms of size, therefore, it is essentially a bear, also having similar paws. However, when it comes to diet, it differs considerably from bears commonly found in America and Europe, being predominantly herbivores. The other major difference is that the panda does not hibernate, not needing to because of the more temperate climate in its natural habitat in China. So there we go, guys, all the Chinese fast facts that you could possibly want, and a couple panda ones thrown in there as well. There's a full in-depth article on the F1Chronicle.com if you want to see all those fast facts and a hell of a lot more. The Chinese Grand Prix is on this weekend, guys, and before we look ahead to the race this weekend, let's have a look at the past. Let's have a look at the most memorable moments, the most unforgettable moments from the Chinese Grand Prix over the years. Now, China has been on the Formula 1 calendar ever since 2004, and a race has been held here every single year since then, except for between 2020 and 2023, because because of the pandemic. No big surprises there really when it comes to that, but plenty of races to choose from, plenty of iconic moments as well. And let's start with 2006, the final Grand Prix win for Michael Schumacher. Now, Formula One's YouTube channel has put up extended highlights of this race, so I would implore that you go and watch that. It was a fantastic Grand Prix. Schumacher at this time was battling for the World Championship with Fernando Alonso. 19 years on, Fernando Alonso is still racing in Formula One, which is just incredible to really think about. But during this race, him and of course his Renault teammate Giancarlo Fisichella were the class of the field. It was a kind of wet, damp race. It was going towards dry towards the end of it. And not long into the race, the Renaults had an advantage of around 20 seconds to Michael Schumacher. I think James Allen or Martin Brundle, whoever was said it in the commentary, on the English commentary, did actually say that Michael Schumacher needs a miracle. But a miracle he got. The Regenmeister absolutely lived up to his name. The Rainmaster mastering these incredibly difficult conditions to eventually overhaul that lead and win the Grand Prix ahead of Fernando Alonso. One of his most impressive victories, and of course it gave him a shot of winning an 8th world title. In the end, Schumacher did of course fall short, but it was a very impressive drive too, and very much put the memories of his embarrassing crash with Christian Albers in the previous year's edition before the race got started to bed at that point. Very much put it into the past. Now, Sir Lewis Hamilton, if you actually looked up my video where I go over the most Chinese Grand Prix wins, I think that'll be out after this one on YouTube. I'm pretty sure. So it won't be out yet, but do go look it up when it comes out, of course. But Sir Lewis Hamilton has the most victories out of anybody here in the Formula One era of the Chinese Grand Prix, so with 6 victories to his name. But during his first Chinese Grand Prix in 2007, it seemed as though this was very much going to be a bogey track. Again, another race that was held in wet, dry conditions. Hamilton had the intermediate tyres on. The racetrack was actually drying out at this point, and actually at this point, his tyres were very much running out. Some guys had already switched to the slick tyres, and Hamilton was going to do the same, but his tyres were absolutely shot to pieces at this point. They were actually delaminating, and I really feel for Hamilton in this moment. I mean, he's gone to have a bit of success since then, to be fair, but this very much effectively did end his chances of a world title in 2007. I know, of course, he went to Brazil with a great chance as well, but that mechanical failure was out of his control. This was potentially in his control, and unfortunately, he ended up going off the track into the gravel trap and out of the race while trying to go into the pit lane. Now, we can't talk about Chinese Grand Prix without mentioning 2013 edition as well. The end to this race was absolute chaos. At this time, the Pirelli tyres were incredibly weak when it came to durability. They didn't last long at all during races. They fell to pieces very, very quickly, especially the softest tyres. Now, Fernando Alonso ended up winning this one. It was a very close win against the likes of also Nico Rosberg. I think Lewis Hamilton was up there as well during this one, but we got to talk about the charge through the field of Sebastian Vettel. Absolutely incredible what he managed to do there. He was in the lead, I think, but he did end up pitting 4 tyres right to the end of the race, and people were saying, oh, there's no way he can catch Fernando Alonso, but he almost caught him in the end. He caught him by about 5 seconds a lap on the faster tyres. So just that moment, that chaos of the Chinese Grand Prix was absolutely something that we love about Shanghai. It very much opens the possibility to overtaking during races. And speaking of overtaking, the 2016 Grand Prix holds the record for the most overtakes out of any in any Formula One Grand Prix that is held in dry conditions in the history of the sport. Of course, the moment that I want to highlight more than anything, though, is Daniel Kvyat, who completed his first of 2 torpedo moments against Sebastian Vettel. Incredibly, both of them actually managed to finish on the podium despite this, but the Russian driver and the German was very much they came to blows during the press cool-down room, the podium cool-down room, I should say. Rosberg looking a bit awkward. I don't think he had any idea what was going on at that point. He was just so far ahead of the rest of the field during pretty much the entire race. But Kvyat and Vettel did come to blows during the first few corners of the Chinese Grand Prix, a controversial incident. And of course, Kvyat in the following race at the Russian Grand Prix, his home race, he would crash Vettel out again, and that would end up being demotion. And at the end of the day, that promoted Max Verstappen to the Red Bull seat. And the rest, as they say, is history. But the final moment I'm going to highlight is the 2018 race. Daniel Ricciardo, not Daniel Ricciardo, that's Daniel Kvyat. Daniel Ricciardo, that guy, the Aussie. One of my favourite drivers. I do love Ricciardo, and this was a textbook Ricciardo win. He had a fantastic storm through the field. His overtake on Valtteri Bottas, which I think was for the lead of the race, was absolutely incredible. Some proper honey badger dive bomb moves going down the inside, round the outside. He was fantastic. And at that time, he very much had a chance of challenging for the World Championship. He got a pair of wins towards the start of the season. Ricciardo, Hamilton and Vettel in the very early stages going for that title. Eventually, Ricciardo and Red Bull would fade away, and it would be Hamilton and Vettel that would battle it out for the championship. But at that moment, a Honey Badger Championship was on the cards, and this talent was really, really showing well for Ricciardo. Fantastic drive from him. Do go watch that race up if you've never seen it before. But yeah, so guys, 5 of the most memorable moments from the Chinese Grand Prix. I actually did a video on the same topic last year, but I watched over it, and oh my goodness me, how the production quality of these videos has changed since we first started doing them. I would literally get my phone and start recording like this at my desk. Things have moved on very much since then, so you'll see me repeating some of these videos from a year ago or so, just because at the end of the day, I'd like to think I've improved a bit as a presenter, my editing and stuff. I didn't even used to edit them back then. They just used to go up as raw video files on Microsoft, and now here we are on YouTube as well, and heading towards 10,000 subscribers, which is absolutely awesome. I really hope we hit that milestone soon, and when we do, I will do a special video. I'm not sure what. Guys, if you're watching this, let me know, what do you want to see for a 10k subscriber special? I will post out as well, on our community page as well, and just hear what you guys want to say. Whether it's a Q&A or what, I don't know. But I want to hear what you have to say about that at the end of the day. And the Chinese Grand Prix this weekend is the first sprint weekend of the Formula 1 season. And with that in mind, I wanted to do a bit of a refresher going over the format of sprint races in 2025, which races are going to have sprint races this season, and if anything's basically changed since last year, just to keep you guys up to date with what's going on about sprints. And if you're new to Formula 1, just a kind of a one-stop shop really when it comes to how sprint races work in Formula 1, etc, etc. So we'll start first of all with the calendar for sprints. So Formula 1 has a 24 race calendar this season, just like last season, and there are 6 rounds, just like last season, that will have the sprint race. Now, 5 of these are maintained from 2024. The Chinese, Miami, United States, Brazilian and Qatar Grand Prix will all have sprint weekends this year. The only change comes in the form of Austria. Austria is no longer on the sprint calendar, but it has been replaced by Belgium. Spa-Francorchamps will have a sprint race again, which it did have in 23 or 22. I can't remember which year it was, but it wasn't that long ago. So it's good to see Spa get a sprint. But how does the sprint format work? Well, it does change the weekend up a little bit. So a regular Formula 1 race weekend has 5 sessions in total, and that is still the same for the sprint, but when these sessions happen and which ones they are does change. So in a standard race weekend like we had in Australia just last weekend, we have free practice 1 and free practice 2 on Friday, we have free practice 3 and qualifying on Saturday, and the Grand Prix is held on Sunday. There are some exceptions to this. Las Vegas Grand Prix is slightly different, and obviously the timings do vary from track to track based on time zone and also the time of day where these are actually held. Some races are held in the day for the most part, but some are held at night and some even at twilight in the case of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. But for a sprint weekend, it does change ever so slightly. So free practice 1 on Friday is still the same, but there's no free practice 2 on Friday, nor any free practice 3 on Saturday either. Instead, on what is usually Friday afternoon, the second session of the day is sprint qualifying to decide the grid for the sprint race, which is held on Saturday morning. Then qualifying is still the same for Saturday afternoon, and the Grand Prix race is held on Sunday afternoon. For the most part, again, different timings and stuff does change that around. But how is a sprint actually run? Well, it's not the same distance as a Grand Prix, as the name suggests. It's a lot shorter. It is 1/3 distance. Now, how is this calculated? Well, you take the number of laps that will actually be held for a Grand Prix. So, for example, this weekend in China, it is a 56 lap race. If you divide that by 3, you get 8.6 recurring, 6 all the way down. Now, that is basically rounded up to 19. The nearest lap above. A bit like a Grand Prix distance as well, in fairness, because that is always taken to 305 kilometers. You have to hit that mark and then the complete lap over. So let's just say that China, for example, a full Grand Prix distance would be 56.5 laps. You would do it to 57 in that case. But this weekend we'll have 19. For Spa, it'll be less because that is a longer circuit. They'll have like 11 laps, I think. No, I'll have about 15 laps or so, I think, off the top of my head. That's how it kind of works. And in terms of points, it is significantly less. It is roughly a third of what you would score for a Grand Prix. So the standard points for Grand Prix is, of course, 25, 18, 15 for the podium positions 1 to 3, 12, 10, 8, 6, 4, 2, 1, going from 4th down to 10th. The sprint race is a lot more simple, and you basically get awarded between 8 and 1 point for finishing in the top 8, and it is done in a sliding scale downwards. So if you win the sprint race, you get 8 points. If you come second, you get 7. If you come third, you get 6. Fourth, you get 5, etc., etc. So you get 1 point down for 8th position. Something that does change as well for the Grand Prix race, I just want to very quickly highlight, is the fact there is no fastest lap point in the Grand Prix this season for 2025. They have removed that. There was never a point in the sprint race for scoring the fastest lap. So that's how it worked, guys. It has no bearing on the Grand Prix race. You could crash out, you could get first position in the sprint. You still have to qualify and do well for the Grand Prix on Sunday. So there we go, guys. That's kind of a rundown for you. I hope that was a helpful guide for you guys when it comes to the sprint races. Are you looking forward to the sprint this season? And would you change any of the sprints? Would you go for China to be the first one? Or would you go somewhere else like Bahrain? Or maybe making Miami the first one instead? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. The Chinese Grand Prix is on this weekend. The Shanghai International Circuit is going to host round 2 of the 2025 Formula 1 season. But before we look ahead to the race that is happening this weekend, let's have a look to the past. Let's have a look at the former winners of this race and who has been the most successful driver here over the years. Well, there's only 3 drivers in the history of Formula 1 that have managed to win this race multiple times. And one very much stands a long way above the rest in terms of their achievements in Shanghai, China. The Chinese Grand Prix has been on the calendar every single year since 2004, aside from a 4-year break between 2020 and 2023. I think you know why the reasons for that was, but it came back in 2024 and it's on the calendar this year and also for the foreseeable future as well. But who has won here in the past? Well, I'll quickly reel off the guys who have only won here on one occasion before going into the multiple winners. So starting in 2004, Rubens Barrichello won the inaugural Chinese Grand Prix driving for Ferrari. Michael Schumacher also won the race for Ferrari in 2006, his final win in the sport. 2007 saw Kimi Raikkonen pick up a win again for Ferrari. Sebastian Vettel won in 2009 for Red Bull, his only win round this track, which is surprising. You'd think he'd win more than once round here. Jenson Button won in 2010. I'm pretty sure that was his first win for McLaren as well. Could be wrong there. And more recently, we've seen some wins for Red Bull Racing. Daniel Ricciardo pulling off an incredible victory here in 2018, and Max Verstappen with a dominant victory last year in 2024. Max Verstappen does technically have 2 victories in Formula 1 here, as he did win in the sprint race as well, but that doesn't count towards your official Grand Prix tally. But the drivers that have won here on multiple occasions, well, there are 3 of them, like I said, and let's go first with Nico Rosberg, who managed to win here in 2012 and 2016. 2012 was Mercedes' first victory in Formula 1 since returning to the sport for the first time since the 1950s. Michael Schumacher also was in for a potential victory that day for Mercedes, but unfortunately his car did break down. I think he had a tyre failure of some description during that Grand Prix. In 2016 he also won the race, did Rosberg, and at an absolute canter, was miles ahead of the rest of the field in the Grand Prix that actually holds the record for the most on-track overtakes during a dry Grand Prix. Bet you didn't know that, but I have mentioned it a few times before, in fairness. Next up, we've got Fernando Alonso. 2 victories here in the past. In 2005, while driving for Renault for his first World Championship, and he also won in 2013 spectacularly for Ferrari. A really difficult race was that because of the tyre wear going on because of the Pirelli tyres, and he managed to win, an unlikely win as well, because Red Bull and Sebastian Vettel absolutely dominated that season on the whole. But who is top of the list? Well, with a massive 6 Grand Prix victories around the Shanghai International Circuit, the undisputed king of this track over the years is Sir Lewis Hamilton. 6 victories to his name, like I said. 2 for McLaren, and also another 4 for Mercedes. He won here in 2008, 2011. 2011, spectacular battle for the win was that against Sebastian Vettel. 2008, of course, going towards his first championship. 2007, we forget that race where he actually did run wide and into the gravel and it ended up costing him the World Championship. But he's had a lot of success here since then. He also won in 2014, 2015 for Mercedes, 2017, and also in 2019 as well. So even though it has been now 6 years since he's won in China, only one complete race has actually passed technically since then. So Hamilton, this is a good track for him, but he's not won here in a long time, partly because it's not been held for 4 of the previous 6 years. But yeah, there you go, guys. The most successful drivers in the history of the Formula 1 Chinese Grand Prix. Now, those are the names you expected to see, and who do you think is going to win this weekend? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, as always, guys. And yeah, have a fantastic day. Hope you have a great race this weekend. If you want to support the channel some more, go over to Patreon. Go on to Substack as well, the biggest F1 newsletter in the world we have on there. I would really appreciate it. And yeah, have a great day, guys. See you very soon.